Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'll open the council meeting Monday, September 14th, 2020. And agenda shows that all counselors, roll call, all counselors are present except for Sam Coons. And agenda review, I don't think we have any items to put on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll move to approval of minutes of August 10th, 2020. Take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, thank you. And anybody have any questions, comments, changes? Seeing none, I'll ask the council clerk to take a vote on the approval of.
Councilor Osher?
Approve.
Councilor Perry?
Approve.
Councilor Maynard?
Approve.
Councilor Gardner?
Approve.
Councilor Robertson?
In favor.
And Councilor Grenier?
Approved.
Okay, and the vote is 6 in favor and there were none opposed.
Thank you, Nancy. Now we'll move on to public hearings. And the way it's going to work is the town of Orono, also known as Bell Rider, will, if you raise your hand as a participant, Bell Rider will unmute you and you can make a comment if there are any comments. And we will move through, starting with public hearing A, to consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and vitulers license for Marsh Island Brewing, LLC, 2 Main Street. Is Dave doing a...
Hi there.
Hey, Dave.
I am. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dave Myland. I'm the Director of Community Development. Are you ready to start with the first one?
Yes, please. Marsh Island.
So the Marsh Island, this is a new license for their malt spirits and vinous license. This is anticipation for them to have to going back inside this fall. So this is they have a brewery license, but they have submitted a new license for a spirits, vinous, liquor, and malt license. Staff has done all of the inspections and recommends approving it.
Great, thank you.
I do not know if the owner is they were planning on being on here, but I don't see everybody else, so they may or may not be want to say something.
Okay. Belle, do we have anyone raising their hand to talk about public hearing A?
We sure do, and I have allowed them to talk.
Okay.
My name's Prentice Sweat. I'm one of the owners at Marsh Island. The reason for the change is obviously this coming weekend we've got nights in the 30-degree temperatures. It's been awesome. We're super happy with how we've been able to stay open outside. The extended area has really helped us a lot. But we do know that we're going to be coming back up on the cold season, and we're going to run into the issue of it being too cold to be outside. So we're going to be back to a basically package store at that point, with only being able to sell growlers and cans if we don't change our license. So our plan is to try to get open back inside. We're going to be adding food to our menu, and then following all the CDC and state guidelines for social distancing and all that. But we're hoping to get this approved so that we don't have to go back to what we did for 3 months, from March until middle of June.
I can understand that. How many people will you be able to seat inside with the CDC guidelines?
We haven't gotten a set number yet. We're trying to talk with Robinson Glass to get some plexiglass. I know last time we checked, plexiglass is near impossible to get, but we want to be able to get plexiglass to be able to put between our old section, our new section, so that we can have It's still, we don't have a ton of space, so it's not going to get us a lot of seats, but it's going to be better than no seats at all, so.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this license?
We have one more, Captain Dan,
All right.
who raised their hand. I allowed them to speak, but it appears that they don't want to. They have not unmuted.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh my God, this is a terrible thing. I don't know how you folks are doing this, but I'm here. I've got my permit somewhere in the mix. I hope it's good. This fellow is very positive. I might have some glass and plexiglass out here. Have him give me a call. And yeah, anything to get them open and up and running for business as much as possible. We want clients, customers through the door. You know, if they can have beverage in you know, as alcoholic beverages being sold and groceries being sold, this outfit needs to be able to have as many people as possible through that door. Accommodate them, please.
Thank you, Dan. All right, anyone else wish to speak?
Could I ask a question of Dave?
Yeah.
Does a restaurant have to serve food according to CDC guidelines to be open? Or are we allowing just bars to be, are bars open now?
Are you asking the question as to whether bars have to serve food?
Well, I'm wondering like what's distinguishing between a bar, like just serving alcohol and just serving food, and what are the guidelines now? I know they shift all the
Sure.
time.
Well, their current license is actually under a brewery license, and under a brewery license, they have a tasting room, and there's no requirement to serve food. But now that they want to kind of coexist with the brewery with a restaurant license as well, that brings in the requirement that they have to sell food as part of their liquor license.
Okay, and I'm just curious, Dave, like a general overall, have they opened up bars in Maine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The quick answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know what was going on as far as that was what was going on in that department. So thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, we will close public hearing A and move on to public hearing B to consider a vitulers license for Harvest Moon LLC, 18 Mill Street.
Hey,
Dave?
it is Dave again, and I'm happy to announce that all the inspections have been completed for the Harvest Moon, and staff is recommending approval of their vitulers license.
Great, thank you. Are there any participants that wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? It appears not. So we will close public hearing B, move on to public hearing C to consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and vitulers license for Orono House of Pizza, 154 Park Street. Dave?
Again, the staff has done the required inspections and is approving the license. I will make one comment, more of a information in case people are asking type of thing, is with the House of Pizza is they're currently under renovation. They've got a permit to expand the back wall a few feet. And the reasoning for doing that is that, again, because of the social distancing, they were down to like 8 or 10 people was all that was allowed in there. But by adding 3 or 4 more feet onto the building, it gives them a little bit more in the room for people to be there. So if you're going by and you see what the work that's going on, that's what it's for. Their occupancy would actually will be less than what it was prior, just because of the COVID agreement, COVID guidelines by the state. But this is allowing them to, again, to reopen all of these facilities. I got to say, and we've worked a lot with them in Orono, and they're all working really hard at trying to repivot and figure out a way to do things and to meet the guidelines and still be able to open their doors.
Great, thank you, Dave. Are there any participants which wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Then I will close public hearing C and move on to public hearing D to consider a Class 1A hotel, malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and victualer's license for Black Bear Inn and Conference Center 4 Godfrey Drive.
So all the inspections have been completed and staff is recommending approval.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone, any participants that wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? All right. Hearing, no?
No hands.
Okay. Then I will close public hearing D. Move on to public hearing E to consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and victualer's license for Woodman's Brewing Company, doing business as Orono Brewing Company, 61 Margin Street.
Again, and staff has performed all the inspections and is recommending approval of the license.
Okay. Any participants wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license?
No hands.
All right. Then I will close public hearing E and move on to public hearing F to consider a Class 11 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and victualer's license for Yama's Inc., doing business as Yama's Bar and Grill, 19 Mill Street. Dave?
The staff has performed all the inspections. They passed without note, and staff is recommending approval.
Great, thank you very much. Any participants wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I will close public hearing F. I move on to public hearing G to consider an automobile graveyard and or junkyard permit for LaPointe Enterprises, Inc., 201 Kelly Road. Dave, are you doing this one too?
I am. This is an annual inspection that is required. The staff did an inspection of the property, found no problems, and is recommending approval of the license.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone that wishes to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I will close public hearing G.
We have a hand raised.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay. I will wait and,
Hello?
hi, Dan.
Hi. Yes, please. My renewal is really important. I like paying taxes. So a renewal and you guys saying that it's a good deal is I provide something very special for the community. And so a continuance is greatly appreciated. Work hard and, you know, I think we're an asset for the community on the whole. I appreciate your vote and for this renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Is there any other hand raised? No, seeing none, I will close public hearing G and move on to public hearing H to consider an automobile graveyard and/or junkyard permit for Town of Orono off Taylor Road. Dave?
Staff has performed the inspections and is recommending approval.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Oh, there's one hand raised.
Yeah, Daniel Lapointe, and I think it's a good thing. I mean, it's a one-stop for a lot of folks. Of course, I'd like to see the junk out here, but hey, you know, that's that helps people out. Today, how much time do we have to spend? And so to have that option there to drop metal off at the site is one of the better ideas, I think, going on at this time. I like the idea of that being renewed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else? Nope. All right, I will close public hearing H and move on to public hearing I to consider an automobile graveyard and/or junkyard permit for Silver's Auto Parts, Inc., 485 Main Street. That's my Rhode Island accent coming out there.
As many of you are aware, Silver's Auto has closed their business to the public, and the property and the business are currently listed for sale. Because the vehicles are still on the property, it requires their continuance of this type of a license. So staff has done an inspection and is recommending approval.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak on this?
Hello, Dan Lapointe again. Hey, listen, Mike at Silver's, outstanding outfit. I mean, their buildings, the way that they do business, just outstanding. And of course, you know, how many years of paying taxes? A lot. So yeah, accommodate them for whatever they need for this new phase of their lives. We always wish them the best. They've been outstanding in helping just about everybody I know. Mike's got a great heart. And thank you for, you know, having a continuance for these guys. A positive vote is good. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Dave, I had a question. If this property sells, does this license automatically transfer with property, or do they have to petition for a new license?
I believe I'm looking at Sophie as well. I believe they have to apply for a new license, both on the state level as well as on the local level.
Okay, thank you. With no one further, I will close public hearing I.
Just 1 second, we have one more hand raised.
Okay.
Jeff Gordon. Just wondering when the status of the business right now, they're not operating, correct? So when does the clock start ticking on their allowed, or is that an allowed use, or is that a grandfathered use? When does the clock start running on they have to conduct business at some point as that use at some point?
Okay, I'll let Sophie answer.
So, Jeff, my understanding is that the use is the junkyard, not necessarily the commercial enterprise. So as long as the junkyard is there, they are required to continue licensing it. It's not the activity of selling things from the junkyard. It is the fact that they have a junkyard.
I would agree with that, and just add to that is it's a DEP requirement. So it is you're looking at the use, not at the whether they're selling to the public or not.
Does that answer your question, Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other, no, one other hand raised again?
Yes, we have Dan.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, Silvers was in this community at the turn of last century. I mean, seriously, they have beautiful photos of their activity. Surely they can be considered grandfathered for their continuance, and it's only reasonable to let them continue. I mean, if their intent is aging out and deciding to sell, you know, how many years of taxes and being contributing to the community? These are great guys and folks that are there. Accommodate them, please. And the continuance should be as long as it needs. I mean, I'm sure they're asking quite a bit of money. However, I have no idea. And thank you. You should vote them another continuance for the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right. With that, I will close public hearing I and move on to public hearing J to consider ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono ordinances for the addition of section 18-153 marijuana establishments and the amendment of section 18-106 scale of uses to chapter 18 land use to establish performance standards and zoning regulations for marijuana establishments, as well as the addition of article 3 marijuana establishments to chapter 29 public health and safety to establish licensing requirements for marijuana establishments should the Town of Orono decide to opt in to allow such establishments. Are we having a presentation on this?
Apologies, I forgot to promote Kyle. I was in the midst of trying to deal with that link. So he is being promoted to a panelist, and it'll just take a few seconds for him to rejoin as a panelist.
Congratulations on your promotion, Kyle.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen. As you know, with this public hearing, we want to go over just an overview of the ordinance language and felt it was easier instead of just talking line through line through it. It would be easier to just give a kind of quick recap presentation that touches on all the different sections. Okay, can people see my screen okay? Okay. So currently, marijuana establishments, both adult use, just personal use, and medical marijuana establishments, while there are state regulations defining both of these things, the default status is that these types of businesses are not allowed unless the municipality opts in to allow them. So this ordinance language is meant to assume that the town would be opting in to allow them, and then, you know, once that decision is made, the ordinance aims to kind of regulate and put standards into place so that they can operate, you know, within the best standards possible. So the way the ordinance is really split is into two main parts. There's a section in the land use ordinance, and then there's a licensing section. So within land use, you're talking about defining the different types of businesses as land uses. Zoning is obviously a major component, talking about where in town the different types of businesses could go. And then performance standards for both establishments and a small section on personal cultivation by individuals. So taking a look at the land use side of things first, the first thing that the ordinance does would be to define the different types of uses. And this comes straight from the state law. There are four types really. There's cultivation facilities, which is your growing products manufacturing facilities, your retail stores and dispensaries, and testing facilities. And these could be on either side, adult use or medical. So you could have a medical manufacturing facility or you could have an adult use manufacturing facility. But what we wanted to do with the ordinance was to sort of lump them together under one land use and one definition, because from a land use impact perspective, the impact is really similar. I mean, the odor that a cultivation facility produces is going to be the same whether it's adult use or medical marijuana. A retail store that's selling adult use marijuana and versus medical marijuana is going to, look similar on the ground. So it was meant to just make the ordinance more efficient and streamlined. So next, I'll just touch on the zoning. So, we have these four different types of establishments. So primarily, you're looking at, for most of them, is being zoned in the Commercial 1 district and Economic Development Zone district. So testing facilities, manufacturing facilities, and cultivation facilities would all primarily be in those two districts. And the Commercial 1 and Economic Development Zone, if we go to the next slide, you can see that's primarily the area around the interstate and on Stillwater Ave. This is, where most of the large-scale commercial or lighter industrial uses are able to take place in town. So things like warehousing, things like that. So it seemed that these types of uses would best fit there. When you look at the retail stores, we have them zoned also in the Commercial 1, but also in the Commercial 2 district. So retail stores are a smaller scale commercial use. We have them zoned here also in the Commercial 2, but that little footnote there, refers to them only being allowed in the Commercial 2 area along Park Street. So if you can see, the top right of the map there is the, Park Street corridor where there's zone Commercial 2. But you can see little pockets around the map that are also zone Commercial 2. And the idea was to avoid one of these establishments going into one of those kind of exceptions and keep them just to that area along Park Street. The only other thing to note that's really different is for cultivation facilities. While primarily the large-scale cultivation facilities would be in the Commercial 1 or Economic Development Zone districts, it is possible for small-scale cultivation facilities, which we'll get into a little later, what that means specifically, to be in the Forest and Agriculture District. But that district doesn't really have the capability from a utility perspective to support the larger scale cultivation facilities that act more as kind of industrial uses. So after that, the ordinance language gets into performance standards, which this covers things like design standards, location, security, ventilation, and disposal of the marijuana byproducts. And the way it's laid out in the ordinance is that each marijuana establishment type has its own subsection that covers each one of these topics. So there's some duplicate information in there that applies to all of them, but some of them are a little different than the others. So there's a few unique standards in there that might apply to a retail store that doesn't apply to the others, and so on. So, but primarily, when we're looking at the design standards, the goal of the ordinance is, to do a few things. You want to limit the visibility of marijuana products from outside of the building. So if you're walking by on the street, it doesn't just jump out and scream, this, businesses selling marijuana. The whole point is that it blends in with the community and the, kind of feel of our existing neighborhoods. The design standards also prevent any outdoor storage of merchandise and plants. Again, this goes to kind of limit the activity to the inside of the building. And it also talks about signage, that you can use some plant imagery, marijuana plant imagery up to 20% of the sign, but that there's not going to be the use of images of other types of marijuana products or paraphernalia on the signage. And again, the whole point of this is just to avoid a feel of a business coming in and being overly kind of flashy just for the sake of grabbing attention, instead of just kind of blending in and being part of the community. So next we move on to the location standards, and part of this is in the state law, but we've expanded on it a little. And what this section does is it separates the marijuana businesses from other things. So the big one is that all marijuana establishment types wouldn't be able to operate within 1,000 feet of schools, preschools, daycares, or within 500 feet of the university district. So this, in combination with the zoning that we talked about before, really limits where these establishments could go in. And specific to marijuana retail stores, the last point talks about that they can't operate within 500 feet of a place of worship or another marijuana retail store. And the whole point of that last one there is that you wouldn't be able to have a cluster of marijuana retail stores in one area. I think most people, if you go to different communities, you might see a lot of one type of business kind of lumped together, at an intersection or, a street. This kind of specifically aims to avoid that happening with marijuana retail stores where you get a bunch of them all in one spot. So yeah, the location combined with the zoning, the standards here really aim to prevent these types of establishments from going into potentially sensitive areas, but still giving a place in town where they would be able to operate. Next, move on to security, ventilation, and disposal standards. A lot of these come roughly from the state law on the adult use side, but certain things were written into the state law for adult use establishments that weren't necessarily covered on the medical side of things. So we felt that, even though there might be some redundancy, it was important to put some of this into the ordinance. From the security aspect, having a requirement that cameras monitor entrances and trash receptacles, that there be enough lighting so that those cameras can operate well and people can see what's going on the property, but at the same time not so much lighting that you're creating a separate nuisance, and having proper locks on the doors and windows and an alarm system. We went around to do some site visits for some of these types of businesses, and it seemed that with the design standards along with proper security and operation plans would go a long way. Next, ventilation. A lot of people with these types of businesses are concerned with the odor and the potential for odors to be an issue to neighboring properties in the surrounding area. So there's some general standards that talk about no marijuana odors being able to be detected beyond the property line. So they would be in violation if that were to happen. As part of the site plan review process, did forget to note that before, that all of these types of businesses would be required to go through the planning board to receive site plan review. It wouldn't be a case, like a normal retail store coming into town. If it's going into an existing building, may only require a permit through the code office. But with these marijuana establishments, they would all be required to go through site plan review, regardless if it was an existing building or a new structure. So there would be more in-depth review for each one of these. So as part of that process, they would be required to submit an odor control plan where they identify what potential odor issues they might have and also how they would go about addressing those. In addition to that, cultivation facilities, the language in the ordinance recommends or suggests that they would have to implement any necessary ventilation and filtration systems and utilize the current best practices, as that could change over time. So it doesn't recommend or state any specifics as far as technologies, because I think what's the best now might change in 5 or 10 years. But that is something that they would have to look at. And if there was an odor problem, it seemed the cultivation facilities, from what we learned during the process, those were the biggest contributor of odor issues. So they would have to implement whatever the best option was if it became an issue. Disposal, making sure that dumpsters and any trash areas were screened from public view and have a locked lid. And also submit an operational plan for proper disposal to make sure they're following all of the proper state guidelines when it comes to getting rid of their product. So the land use section touches on one last thing, and it's a little different than focusing on the 4 establishment types. This is for personal cultivation. So the state law does allow people 21 and over to grow 3 mature marijuana plants. And a municipality can't regulate that. You can't say a person can't grow their 3 mature marijuana plants. But what a municipality can do is regulate a little bit where they do that. The state law would allow someone to grow their plants on someone else's property, for instance. But in our ordinance, we have stated that a person can only grow their allowed marijuana plants on their property that they're living at. So what this does is prevent a single person with a large lot somewhere from having sort of a collection of different people's plants all growing on their lot, which would then create kind of a an informal cultivation facility. So that was the only standard as far as adult use home cultivation. On the medical side, registered caregivers and medical dispensaries, as defined here in our ordinance, would only be able to cultivate marijuana as a cultivation facility, the land use. So they would have to do that in the zoning districts that we talked about before. So in the commercial 1 and EDZ, you can do that up to 7,000 square feet of plant canopy. And in the forest and agriculture district, you could have a 500 square foot cultivation area. Qualifying patients and just regular caregivers, not registered caregivers. So they have further standards and restrictions on how much they're allowed to grow. So the ordinance does not regulate them. They would simply have to abide by the state guidelines for what they were doing. So that pretty much covers the land use side of things. The licensing side is pretty short. It would just be, in addition to the land use permit, each establishment would have to obtain a local license. This is in addition to their state licensing that they have to obtain. It would be renewed annually, similar to the victualer's license that we just heard. It would most likely be a similar process. So this public hearing would be in addition to the public hearing they would have to go through at the planning board level. So the public would have multiple opportunities when a business like this came forward. And the licensing process also establishes inspection criteria by the code enforcement officer, fire department, and police department. So in summary, the ordinance is designed, like I said, to allow marijuana establishments and allow each type of them. Currently they are not allowed in town because Orono has not opted in to allow them. So this ordinance would do that, but it aims to do a few things really. Trying to keep in mind the nature of the community and the feel that we have here, and have these types of businesses blend in with existing businesses and the existing community. Acknowledge that there could be potentially sensitive areas in town with certain groups of people or other uses, and kind of zone and locate these marijuana establishments away from them. Not allow any one area of town to become overrun with this type of establishment. So again, using the standards to kind of spread things out, while at the same time not saying, oh, there can only be, one or two of a certain type of establishment like other communities have done. And then last, really paying proper attention to make sure that the establishments are run well when it comes to security and any odor or other nuisances that they might cause. So that is, I think, a fairly efficient but thorough run through of the ordinance. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so the way we're going to, I had one question, Kyle, before we start. Is the home cultivation with the number of plants, is that part of any referendum that we put out, or is that something that we'll just vote on?
So are you asking if council would vote on that piece?
Or is that being submitted as part of the referendum as well?
Yeah, I think it's being all submitted together from my understanding, but if, I guess, if it came down to pieces of this not going through, then we would most likely bring some part of that back separately to address that side of things.
Okay. All right. The way the public hearing is going to work is we're going to do it similar to the emergency ordinance we had for the mask. We're going to give everyone 3 minutes to speak, and if we need to, then we can come back around. But I believe there was a hand up, and so I can't see it, Belle, so if you could let the person.
I've got to get to it too because of my screen sharing, so.
Looks like Don Volk.
Yes.
And one is a cultivator, and they have no relationship to one another. Are we subject to that same separation?
Don, I'm sorry, I think we missed the beginning part of your either question or comment. So if you could just start again.
Sure. My question is with regard to the 500-foot separation between multiple businesses. If I wanted to have a retail establishment but no interest in cultivation testing, do I have to worry about other applicants in my area applying for a license, but they happen to be within 500 feet of my property?
Okay.
Do you want me to answer? So the 500-foot setback between marijuana businesses was just for retail stores. So a marijuana retail store could be within 500 feet of a other type of marijuana establishment. So it could be within 500 feet of a manufacturing facility or testing facility. And the idea behind that was that the retail stores are really the only type that are very visibly that type of business from the outside. The other ones, you might drive by and it looks like a, any type of kind of large scale commercial warehousing operation. So limiting those types from each other didn't seem as relevant as just the retail stores.
Kyle, wouldn't also it be a traffic issue for retail stores being together? Potentially.
Yeah, I mean, potentially it could be. I mean, any time, multiple high traffic commercial uses go into the same area. But I mean, the university mall, for instance, somewhere like that would have, ample parking for any number of, resources, retail stores to go in. But this was, really to prevent a situation where a shopping center like that had, 3 marijuana retail stores just in a row. There could potentially be 1 or maybe 2 in an area like that, but that would really be it. But it doesn't touch on the other types of marijuana businesses. So if you had a retail store in the commercial one, and then the next lot over was a testing facility, that would be allowed.
Thank you. Don, did you have anything else?
No, that answered my question. Thank you.
Sure. Sue Amaro has her hand up. Sue,
It's been activated.
okay. Faintly, yep.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Yes. I just wanted to comment that I think this is a really good plan, and I think I hope it passes. I think it will benefit the town greatly and certain individuals greatly. And that is all I have to say.
Thank you, Sue, very much. Does anyone else wish to speak? Looks like Dan.
Hello, yes. Kyle, I briefly saw that map. Can you talk about the LDR zone? I mean, the agricultural zones in Orono and the other properties. I didn't see anything going out on Forest Avenue. I'd like you to speak to that and the open farming, if you will, that sort of a thing. There's a question in my mind. I haven't followed up on it. This is a first for me to inquire. If waste product is an issue, how come you couldn't, my question is, how come it couldn't be composted? I mean, the natural nature of composting would take care of all, things that could be affect someone, I would think. And a nice compost is it takes care of the smell also. But my question is the LDR, because we've got a little bit of property out here along Stillwater and Forest Avenue, and just like to understand the impact or what's available for that. Can you show us that picture again and talk about the zones that are permitted? I didn't see that well.
I don't know if I can bring that back up because I think we already have one.
That's okay. That's
Sure.
fine. but I mean, just speak to
Yeah, I can speak to it
area
though.
of LDR and Forest Avenue, Stillwater, and of course, the end of the Kelly Road.
Sure.
And we've got, I don't know, my God, the acreage fluctuates here, but quite a few acres. So I don't know if this is anything wanted to do, but it's news to me. So talk about it, would you please?
Sure. So the low density residential district was never discussed as a potential zone where any of these would be allowed due to it's primarily a residential district. There are no it's meant for fairly low dense residential uses. So that area along Stillwater, it's not really in the town's growth area. So when it came to looking at the larger scale commercial cultivation facilities, although it's cultivating, so it seems close in nature to growing and farming. The amount of resources that the facilities need is fairly high and kind of contradicts the kind of open space and less developed nature of the low density district and the forest and agriculture district. So that's why primarily the cultivation facilities would still be only allowed in the commercial 1 and economic development zones, which are more commercial districts. The idea was to allow some very small scale cultivation areas in the forest and agriculture district as an accessory use, because that's the agriculture district. But that was never a similar thing was not discussed for the low density district, because it just didn't really it doesn't have the same intent and purpose for that district that the forest and agriculture district does. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or if you had any follow-ups, but be happy to answer anything else.
Am I still on?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I hope it's clear. Acreage is everything, and nearly 400 acres. I'm looking for opportunity here. And although it's not my cup of tea, I do like paying my taxes. And why wasn't that considered? I mean, there's vast tracts out on Forest Avenue. The thing with power considerations, I know Stillwater has the commercial lines, as does the main road have commercial lines. And so the ability to have that commercial and electrical power available is important. So, I'm thinking the considerations you're saying, maybe that's part of it. But I just, the silence on this for this area just doesn't quite set well with me. So perhaps we'll discuss that. But I'd like to have option if it's not my cup of tea, but I like paying my bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? I do not see anyone else's hand up. So I am going to close public hearing J and move on to public hearing K to consider ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono ordinances, Chapter 26, Parks and Recreation, Section 26-30, B, tobacco, marijuana, and related products. Sophie, I'm not sure who's this.
This is me today. As we talked with council in council committee, the town not so long ago actually amended the open space, the Parks and Recreation and Open Space Ordinance in which this sits. However, City of Bangor's public health team received grant funds and were able to provide some technical assistance to area communities looking at their tobacco, marijuana, and related products ordinances. So we were far ahead of many in that our ordinance contemplated a wider view of smoking. However, it is not quite descriptive enough to kind of meet the best practice. So as we talked about with council, this does not change the intent of the ordinance at all. However, it does describe that tobacco includes dip, spit and spitless chew, snuffs, nasal tobacco. It's aimed at better defining vape and what smoking isn't just your typical pipe or cigarette. So this went to the Community Development Committee, had a rousing discussion about hookahs and marijuana, and staff has attempted to revise in a way that better addresses the concerns raised at council. I don't know if you need more from me.
That sounds good. So I will ask if there's anyone that wishes to comment on this ordinance change. Seeing no hands raised, I will close public hearing K. And because I live next door to 25 College Heights, I am going to step aside for the next public hearing and ask Councilor Perry to take this.
I would be glad to. So public hearing I is to determine whether it is in the best interest of the town and how to dispose of tax acquired property at 25 College Heights, tax map 019-002 lot 053. And I assume Sophie is going to speak to this before we accept public comment.
I am. So this is a property that some councilors will recall. We had a flaw in our tax lien process 2 years ago and went through public hearing with the intent to sell, and the property owner was given an opportunity to redeem it because of the flaw in our process. So this is a foreclosure for 2017 property taxes that were not paid. Currently, the town is owed $14,323.51 in total on this parcel. The parcel is a land and a structure. The land is valued at $48,100. The structure is currently valued at $57,900 for a total town valuation of $106,000. It sits on 0.4 acres of land. It's currently vacant. There are some code concerns there, which is what led staff to recommend to council that we move to the sale of property and not give the homeowner an opportunity to redeem it. A 21-day letter has gone out to the homeowner, giving them opportunity to collect their personal effects. And then the only other note I have on this process, is that I need to check back with the water district, because when I looked into this a few months ago, they were also owed money that we would need to collect and send to them. So that's the information that I have. I will tell you it is very hard to complete service on this particular homeowner.
Mm.
And we are not aware of any other parties in interest on this parcel.
Thank you, Sophie.
So may I ask a question? Is it appropriate now to talk about the different options in terms of disposal, just in case the public want to weigh in on that, or should we hold that till new business? Or
So let me share with you that happy to go through this process with you now. I'm just looking for my notes. But I do want to make sure that council is aware that we made an error when we when we set this public hearing language, in that the public does not usually weigh in on how it is disposed, just whether or not it should be. I think where this was part of the public hearing notice, that my assumption is that council would want to hear from the public on whether it should and how. So there are 4 options that are given to the town council. The first is a formal bid, and that's a sealed process. We put notice out to the general public. We give them at least 14 days to submit a sealed bid. We open it all at the same time. And in general, the high bid gets the parcel. I don't know, given some of the other priorities in front of council right now, if there are any limitations that you would want to make on the bid. Can it be used for rental property? Do you not care? Do you want the property to be taken down or brought to code within a certain amount of time? Where there are some code issues here, if we did it through the formal bid process, we probably would want to look at what criteria the council might want to add. The negotiated sale is an opportunity for where you say, I'd like to do a negotiated sale. We put a notice out in a newspaper of general circulation that gives a basic description of the property and any criteria that you would want people to be aware of for the sale, and then gives them an opportunity to submit an offer to me. And then it's not as, with a formal bid, it is an envelope and you open it up and it's purely on the money. A negotiated sale can take other things into consideration. But the idea being, everybody is put on notice that they have an opportunity. Sale to abutters is a process that we've used before, where we say that there are specific sensitivities or reasons why it makes sense for an abutter to just be given the opportunity to bid. So you don't open it up to the world, you just open it up to the abutters. And we have drawn what an abutter is very closely historically. It is somebody who has an adjacent property, meaning it would add to the property, not somebody 500 feet away. I don't know if that's helpful. And then I love it when the ordinance does this, but you can utilize any other procedure you want. It's including but not limited to listing the property with a broker or using a public auction. So essentially, this, if you look at the intent of this ordinance, it is to make sure that the sale of property, unless there are specific criteria that would cause it to make sense for it to be a closed process, that it is an open process that everybody at least has the opportunity to try to participate in. I will tell you that the more criteria you put, so you have a parcel, let's think, a home in a neighborhood where most of the homes are between $170,000 and $250,000. And you've got a home that is valued at $57,000. So we clearly have some structural major issues with this property. And so you might want to think about an alternative that allows you some control over what happens next. Kind of the thought.
Okay, are we ready to accept comments from the public? Belle, do we have any hands up? I cannot see that.
Yeah, actually, one hand just popped up. Eric is now allowed to talk.
Go ahead, Eric.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Maynard. I am an abutter. I live at 21 College Heights. I moved here in 2005, moved back to Orono in 2005. Marilyn was our neighbor at the time, Marilyn Schoenberger, the property owner. Marilyn passed in March 21 of 2014, and up to that time, she kept the house immaculate. It was impeccable. I helped her with cutting some trees and some things like that. By 2000, it passed to her daughter. By 2016, the house became vacant. Since that time, there has been a tree that's fallen on the roof. The cellar was unsecured. Vermin has gotten into the basement. I fear that there's black mold throughout the entire interior of the house. The last tenants who were there told us that was a problem. And I look at a backyard that has what, when I worked in the woods, was called a bunch of widow makers. That is trees that are leaning on other trees and I assume are going to come down either with a heavy snow or heavy wind, either onto our property or to the property next, the other property, which it would be problematic for either household. So I wholeheartedly support you taking the property. I had spoken back in 2018 with William Murphy and had written to him about my concerns. Now reached 2 years, actually it's over 2 years since I spoke with Mr. Murphy. And the concerns that I had then have only become magnified by virtue of the fact that there has been absolutely nothing done by this homeowner to secure the property or to make it safe for anyone in the neighborhood. In fact, when the tree fell on her house, she had it taken off only after Mr. Murphy contacted her multiple times, telling her she had to take it off because it was a threat to the neighborhood. She just took all the brush and piled it in her backyard, which has now created a fire hazard in the backyard, especially with the drought this summer. Given that, so the first thing is I urge town to move forward as quickly as possible to put some conditions on the property as far as, I don't believe that you're going to repair that property. It's going to be a tear down as far as I can see. Hopefully you'll get somebody who can rebuild it and will rebuild it in accord with what the neighborhood is, because otherwise it will harm the abutters as well as the entire neighborhood. This is a nice neighborhood that we live in. And I will tell you, in fact, we had someone tell us that our property was negatively impacted by the abandoned property next door when they were looking at it. I would have an interest in it, but anything that gets it moved quickly is what I would urge council to do.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have other people who would like to comment on this item, Belle?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dan. You know, the gentleman that just spoke, I mean, if he's interested in making it right for that neighborhood, he should be given every opportunity. And I mean, with the amount of investment, my gosh, if he just takes care of the taxes, that should be a good go for everybody, I would think. Fellow sounds really, I think I've met him before. He's a pretty upstanding fellow. And give him the opportunity, guys. Let's make something good out of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else with their hand up, Belle?
No.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
My question is, where does this go after? Does this go back to committee to decide? Or are we going to decide on an option tonight?
Well, there's an order under new business to deal with this item, which we could discuss, amend, postpone, or take action on. So I think when we get to new business, we'll have an opportunity to make that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I'll close public hearing L and pass the gavel back to Cindy.
Thank you very much. All right, last public hearing is to consider a proposed order entitled Debt Refunding and New Money Bond Order. The order will provide for the issuance of bonds in an amount not to exceed $15,268,518, with the proceeds of the bond sale to be used for the following purposes. 1, to refund, refinance at a lower interest rate, a USDA loan and general obligation bonds previously issued for capital improvement projects having an approximate cost of $13,018,518, and 2, to fund new capital improvements having an approximate cost of $2,250,000, including fiber optic lines and public works, and 3, to fund transaction costs and other expenses related to the identified projects and the bond sale. Sophie, do you want to present on this?
You will notice that tonight we have Dick Brannigan with us.
Sophie, I can barely hear you.
All right, let's see if I can wake up my microphone. Better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. So tonight we have Dick Brannigan with us. And as you'll recall, he is our bond advisor. The way we plan to do this, I've got a very brief presentation. I'm going to take my direction from Council Finance Committee and try to stay very high level. While I'm talking about bonds, the refinancing, the environment, if people have questions for Dick, that's why he's here, to answer whatever questions you might have. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the new borrowing, because that seemed to be where the lion's share of our questions came in. So municipal bonds, or this issue, is also known as floating or selling bonds. These are instruments sold by a town to secure funds for specific purposes that are repaid over time on a specific payment schedule. It includes the initial principal or the funds that we receive plus an accumulated interest. The collateral for this debt is the full faith and credit of the municipality's taxpayers. So I don't look at this all by myself. In fact, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Dick Brannigan, who's with Northeast Municipal Advisors out of Portland. We are also using Piper Sandler Company of Glastonbury, Connecticut, and Bernstein Shore Librag is our bond counsel, and town council might recall that we have used Lee on previous bond issues. So you're going to hear some numbers tonight and some projections as to what we think we can save. These are not guarantees. These are Dick and Mark best estimate on projection of where our bonds might be able to sell. One thing I like about working with Dick is that he tends to be quite conservative so that we're not surprised with higher interest rates later, but he is not a magician. He merely has a little bit of a crystal ball with some fog. So before we talk about what we want to do, I think it's really important for people to understand what the legal limitations are for council. So under state law, the town can have a total of 15% of its state valuation. For us right now, that's $68,280,000 that we could have out in debt. That would be very bad. We don't want to do that. But it's important for you to see that we have just about a quarter of that debt out right now. So we're still relatively low debt levy. The proposed new borrowing would add 3.3% to that, so still very small. The WPCF is on its own, can only have 7.5%. As you can see here, we're only at about 21% of the allowed debt there. This issue has no new WPCF debt. However, in order to work with the Public Works bond, part of this does kind of rely on borrowing money from the main bond bank that we're hoping we'll be able to get some principal forgiveness on, but that won't come until later this fall. So the 2020 bond issue has two pieces. The first is to refinance or refund $13 million of general obligation bonds that we took out in 2014. The projected savings is about $650,000, so significant savings for the town to look at. There is a proposal that we also borrow some new funds to help us get high priority infrastructure projects taken care of. And we'll talk a little bit about those. So the debt is in two different pieces. One is the USDA general obligation bond that was initially a 29-year term, had an interest rate of about 3.125%, and the annual had a fixed annual payment of $105,800. We pay this out of the downtown and transit-oriented TIF district, and the refunding does nothing to the term, but hopefully reduces the interest rate. The 2014 municipal bonds were originally $16.85 million for a 25-year term. The interest rate is changes with these, so it's 3 to 4%, and our annual payment across TIF districts, the general fund, and WPCF is about $1.1 million. Ready for me just to continue? Okay. The proposed new borrowing, I'm going to break this into two different discussions. One is for Public Works infrastructure. We are proposing $2 million of new money to help fund major long-term capital investments. I want to just highlight that these are identified priorities. These are not things that we thought, oh, gee, it might be nice. These are things that are insignificant. We have significant need. So the reason that we're suggesting this is that in an effort to mitigate the increases on the tax rate, we have really pushed and stretched our infrastructure investment plan out. So what we need to invest in infrastructure on the Public Works side is not equal to the amount of funding that has been available to do that. And it's one of those things we kept waiting for a better day, and so we push it down the road a little bit at a time. And what we have gotten to is a point where we are at a tipping point where things, instead of minor repair, are going to need major repair, which will cost a lot more if we don't look at a different way to deal with this. And for folks who like presentations, we talked about this extensively during the budget process. So when we looked at the capital plan, our Public Works director could easily identify a couple of, or a few major projects that were kind of creating a bottleneck for all of the routine, more maintenance capital investment. And those were projects that were really big, and we were having to break into pieces and fund over several years, which was pushing projects out. So when we looked at the bond, we said the only thing we want to fund with this are major capital projects that will have a life of at least 20 years. This is not about paving a street. This is about rebuilding areas and dealing with major drainage issues primarily, and sidewalks. And it is part of a larger plan that we brought back to council that we think is a more sustainable investment plan. So when we look at the options, we have really talked about 3 different options. One is going with the current adopted plan. So in FY21, we adopted a 5-year capital improvement plan that went from an investment in FY21, which we'll all acknowledge this was a really weird year for us because we cut everything back as far as we could, given the revenue questions that we had. But this, the plan, the 5-year plan moving forward, requires an average investment of about $1.2 million a year just in infrastructure. And that is just to fund a typical 5-year plan. So for FY22, that increase is about $920,000 or 222% over what we adopted this year. And it would add about, it wouldn't add, that increase is equivalent to about $1.86 on our tax rate. So if we stayed with this plan, almost every single project on that plan is a priority to complete now. And I went back and looked because during our discussions, we had a question about Broadway, which is just a small street on the other side of the village. And that was actually initially planned for paving in FY19, and it has been bumped ahead because of funding. Right now it stands on the plan at FY22. So this would be part of that additional $920,000. So then the other idea that came up is if we could agree that what we really need to spend and we could live within is $800,000 a year total. That's $350,000 more than we allocated this year. However, that is in line with previous allocations in infrastructure. That's equivalent to about 71 cents on the tax rate. However, it stretches just the same number of projects, not adding any projects in. We are now a 5-year plan to an 8-year plan. And that Broadway project that was supposed to happen in FY19 is now moving and then got moved to FY22 because we bumped it ahead a year at a time. Now goes to FY25 on the plan. So you see, when you stretch, it means that our infrastructure that we've already identified as having needs will have a lot more time to crumble. So the thought is, if we said that $800,000 target every year is a good one, and we stay there, we borrow $2 million of this money at a very low rate, we are able to pull some of those large projects off the plan and maintain the 5-year plan as it is currently written without having that large of a jump to get to 1.2 million. And the way Rob has laid it out, it is consistent in the $800,000 range as a draw on taxes. So you might ask, what are those big projects? So what we are suggesting is that we look at the Mahaney development, which is the Mount View Frost Lane neighborhood, for drainage and road repair. This is the project that will marry with a significant project for sewer and we think is a major contributor to our CSO problem. Chapel and college, that has been on the books for a while, and we've pushed that, and the price keeps going up. Every time we push it, it gets more expensive. The Route 2 culvert replacement, that is the local share less our grant that we received for the state project. North Main Avenue, this is the last piece of that project. Margin Street drainage, if you drive down Margin Street from Harrison and you take a look over your right side, out your right side window of your car, you will see these lovely gabions on the side. They are causing, or there is a significant drainage issue there where we are seeing freeze that is that we need to address. And Main Street sidewalks, which we've chatted about at length with the town council. This is actually one of the core elements of the comprehensive plan for our walkable community. It is not just a repavement of the sidewalks. This $500,000 is actually a portion of the money that we think this project is going to cost. We are in conversation with the state of Maine about leveraging funds to help add to this $500,000. And you will see that this right now is a little over 2 million. The 390,000, I think we can make up with savings from this year in terms of what we won't do on the capital plan for this year. If we put it into infrastructure reserve, we'll have it towards these projects. And we have some money in the reserve assigned fund balance that I think you can reassign for this purpose for the difference. So the thought is that if we borrow the 2 million, we would find the 390,000 in ways other than asking for new tax revenue. So this new debt payment starts out in FY22 at $139,000 and goes down $2,000 a year based on the current projections. The new debt tax rate equivalent is 28 cents per $1,000 of value. The increased plan to fund the capital is 78 cents for a total of $1.06. I want to make it really clear, I'm doing this to give you a sense of the equivalent in tax rate. I have not heard from the town council that we're planning to just have this be a pass-through to increase the tax rate. In fact, what I've heard is this needs to be part of a plan as we look at the overall operations and of the town. So we're also retiring debt in FY22 and FY30, which FY22 and FY23, that will total almost $90,000 a year that we are currently paying that we won't be paying. So the other piece of the new borrowing is to look at the expanding the fiber network. And when we look at this, we're asking for $250,000 as a continuation of a multi-jurisdictional economic development project with the City of Old Town and the University of Maine system. So the town has already invested approximately $130,000 of cash and significant in-kind resources for the operation of this partnership, and also a grant match, which I will talk about briefly. So Old Town Orono Fiber Corporation, also affectionately known as OTO Fiber, is an economic development collaborative between the City of Old Town, the University of Maine system, and the town of Orono that started several years ago and is aimed at bringing reasonably priced ultra-high speed, or also known as gigabit speed, broadband access to our area. And the reason for that is we think that it would better support increase commercial, home-based business, and entrepreneurial activity if we could get this fiber optic network up and running. So OTO Fiber started its effort by developing pilot projects in Old Town and Orono stringing fiber. It was funded by a 2015 Northern Border Region Commission grant that the town has provided well over $100,000 of match for. The pilot locations were determined through infrastructure evaluation, neighborhood surveys, and through that they were able to identify a potential take rate, which is important as we move through this process. So OTO Fiber needs to install infrastructure from the fiber to the premises to allow customers to access the infrastructure. Also, Bell would call these drops. The selection of the pilot area is really critical because it creates the basis for OTO to actually get future funding, revenue bonds, and develop kind of the business case for this effort. So what happens in this pilot area is absolutely critical to being able to roll this out further. And what I am suggesting is that the proposed borrowing be contingent upon OTO agreeing to repay the town. Ultimately, the town is responsible for debt repayment. The initial payment starts next year at is projected to be $19,850 and to decrease about $300 a year for the next 20 years. We are currently evaluating being able to use tax increment financing dollars for this expense, at least until OTO generates adequate revenue to begin to pay us back. We are, because they don't have an active revenue revenue generating activity, we don't project that they'll be able to pay us back until year 3 of the debt. So let's just say it can't be funded through the TIF, and OTO Fiber, it takes longer. The maximum tax rate impact based on the projections that we have been given is about 3 cents on the mill rate. So during the committee, I was asked, why do we want to do this? And what I have been able to uncover is that access to fiber actually increases home value. Pretty cool. That there are some public safety benefits to fiber around monitoring our congestion on roadways, being able to maintain and control our traffic lights. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but if there's an emergency and we need to dump the University of Maine, being able to sit in the EOC and control the traffic lights is probably really important in that moment. This successful pilot really supports and is a critical step in getting a municipal-wide deployment, which is where we really want to go with this project. And I think it's really interesting that the quote that Bell has put here comes from a 2008 study of fiber to the premises done by the city of Seattle. The calls for greater broadband deployment came from organizations as diverse as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, AARP, and the National Association of Chief Information Officers, Google, and major equipment manufacturers such as Nortel and Cisco. all of whom recognize that the United States' position as a technological and economic leader require networks that enable growth applications such as teleconferencing, distributed remote collaboration and development, and distance learning. So we sit here in 2020 in a community that we want to bring people to for the quality of life, right? We have an incredible quality of place here. And in order to do that, we really need to be able to support people learning and working from the home setting. I can tell you anecdotally that when we went into a remote status back in March of last year, we had commercial broadband, high speed. And partway, we were getting so frustrated because we were freezing in our teleconferencing. We were having a hard time doing the work that needed to get done. And it just so happened that our arrangement with the University of Maine system kicked in, and we hooked on to their network, which is fiber optic. And we just don't have those problems anymore. That when it's fiber, I am competing with my own team for space, which is really hard to max, go beyond its capability. When you're on a commercial network, you're not only competing with your household for space, it's kind of like the old multi-party lines. You're competing with your neighborhood. And I don't know if other people see it, but when I work from home, I do very well until everybody else wakes up and wants to stream all their stuff, and everything just kind of crashes down, and it's just easier to come to work. But I do think that there are some incredible benefits to our to rolling out community-wide broadband, ultra high speed. And I think it really it's spoken to in our comprehensive plan when we think about what we're trying to attract here in Orono. So the benefits to subscribers, I got a little ahead of myself here, but when we think about symmetrical ultra high speeds, what we're talking about is data goes out at the same speed that it's coming in. So when you're video conferencing and you see everybody else, but they see you freeze, which I think that's like Counselor Gardner, ultra high, that's because it's not equal. And ultra high speed supports many users at once. All current residential offerings share bandwidth within a neighborhood. So speeds are advertised as up to. Fiber networks, like I said before, are dedicated to the subscriber. So it's equivalent to sharing a road. Easy to go 60 miles an hour when you're the only car there. But once lots of cars are trying to share the same 2-lane road, everybody slows down. And we've already seen, to some extent, current providers offering faster speeds than before, because as soon as the town started talking about the fiber option. So the next steps. So this question is before council tonight as a resolution to see if you will support us moving forward. This is that go, no-go time where if we move forward, we are going to be incurring some pretty big costs that if you stop partway through, we will still have to pay. And we've talked about this. This is, I think the estimate was between $50,000 and $60,000. So let's just assume that council agrees and we move forward tonight. We will continue work on a preliminary official statement. It's in the draft. We are drafting it right now. Dick is pushing us to have rating calls next week with a hope of getting our ratings back the first week of October. So we are rated like you see other bonds. And the Standard & Poor and Moody's will look at the town and the information that Dick puts together and makes us look really, really good. And they will come back to tell people what our credit worthiness is. And that is a big hurdle to get through this process with. Then we think we'll get bond pricing the second week of October with an idea of closing October 29th. That is what I have. And I hope that I took the direction of council at the Finance and Operations Committee meeting to heart with that. And I don't know if Dick has anything he wants to add.
Very well done, Sophia. Can you hear me okay? I think I just leave it at this. We're in a 2% market right now on 20-year bonds. The question always comes up, will it go lower? I don't know, but it's as low as it's been in a long, long while, and it's been pretty consistently low. So me, along with our underwriter at Piper Jaffray, who's in the market every day nationally with his team of underwriters and myself, we think it behooves the town to move ahead with obviously doing the refunding. The majority of the debt that we're refunding, the USDA loans at 3.125%, that's going to drop down to the 2% range or under. All of the other bonds, which have fixed rates, but as Sophie pointed out, they vary over the term of the bonds. They vary between 3 and 4. So to use a number of 3.5, those are going to turn into 2% debt. And so the savings of in excess of $600,000 today translates into $25,000 to $30,000 a year in savings to the town. When we add on the new projects, the $2 million and the $250,000, you really can add those into this for very little extra money. The ratings aren't going to cost any more. Bond counsel really not going to cost any more. So it's a way to do the financing of those at very, very low cost because we're going to do the refinancing anyway. So we put in the new money, add it to the refunding issue, and we have 2 series of bonds, Series A for the refunding, Series B for the new money. Sylvia is right on the timetable. We are busy gathering data and updating. Got a call back from Moody's and Standard & Poor's both today. Moody's is ready to do the rating next week. I haven't heard back from Standard & Poor's, but I'm sure that they'll be ready as well. So when we're ready, they'll be ready, and I think that we can meet the timetable that we've laid out.
Thanks, Dick. So Sophie, I will take public questions, but also I'm wondering if you want to take counselor questions now, and then we'll go to the order later. Okay. So is there any participant on this meeting or attendee that would like to speak regarding this public hearing on the debt refunding? I don't see any hands up. Is there any counselors that have any questions or comments? Council there is a member of the public that has their hand up. So go ahead, Sue.
Hi, this is Sue Amaro. I just want to say I really support getting this high-speed internet, and I think it has a lot of merit, and thank you for all your work towards it.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else have any? Sophie?
I just want to, if council has questions for Dick, I was hoping that we wouldn't hold him here forever, given the length of our agenda. But he says he's willing, but
it's fine.
I think you did a great job with the numbers. I think they made sense, and council has talked about this a couple of times. So All right. No one else? I will close public hearing M then. Thank you, Dick and Sophie, for a very thorough presentation. And I will move on to acknowledgements by council members. And I'll start with Councillor Grenier.
I have no acknowledgements today. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Osher?
Just that it's wonderful to be in Orono. And I heard from someone in Ellsworth that some of our sculptures, when they're no longer being displayed in Orono, will be displayed in Ellsworth. So we are, our rainbow joy is being, and pride joy is being transported to other places to be shared with other people. And I'm very proud of Orono.
Thank you. Cheryl?
I'd like to acknowledge the good job that the University of Maine has done with their opening, that we're 2 weeks into classes. And as we watch nationally, universities, colleges, and universities close and send their students home and go to online with hotspot COVID cases, I think the University of Maine and our town and Old Town, I think they've done a wonderful job. And I'm excited that and I'm crossing fingers. I don't think we can let up. I don't think we can get complacent, but I do want to acknowledge the good job that they've done so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Tom, Councillor Perry?
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of two longtime Orono residents since our last meeting. Both of them have contributed significantly to the community. Dana Smith, who for many years operated a business called Yardsmith, passed away since our last meeting. And Lynn Burpee Adkins, who was a longtime Orono resident, graduated from Orono High School, had a long career as a teacher in Connecticut, and returned to Orono in her retirement. And we will sadly miss both of them.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Councillor Coons, unexpected pleasure of having your.
Yeah, no, thank you. Things changed a little bit, so I'm back. I may be ducking out. I'm not feeling terribly well, but last year, maybe the last 2 years, we had a phenomenal crossing guard at the school, and I didn't know how we were going to replace him, but although the new one doesn't dance, he's doing an excellent job, and he's very friendly. And so I just like to do a little hats off to him.
He does run very fast, though, because he didn't want to get hit. So, Megan, Councillor Gardner, do you have anything?
Yes, I would also just like to say a quick word of acknowledgement about Lynn Adkins. She was a member of the Historical Society, and when she was in hospice care, apparently she wrote a little note to be passed on to the society after she had passed on. So we received that a few days ago, and you know, she'll be greatly missed.
Thank you. I would just like to acknowledge that part of our consent agenda is we're recognizing Constitution Week in September 17th through the 23rd. Thank you all. I moved on to unfinished business. We don't have any. So I will take a motion to move the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Council Clerk Nancy, could you take roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councillor Coons?
After 2 hours, move, yes, move approval.
Councillor Osher?
Move approval.
Councillor Perry?
Move approval.
Councillor Maynard?
Approve.
Councillor Gardner?
In favor.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Councillor Robertson?
Oh no, is my internet not working here?
Sorry.
In favor.
Councillor Robertson, okay. And Councillor Grenier?
In favor.
And the vote was 7 in favor and there were none opposed.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, order approving ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono Ordinances, Chapter 26, Parks and Recreation, Section 26-30, B, tobacco, marijuana, and related products. I'll take a motion, please.
Move.
Second.
All right. Is there any comments by council? We had a public hearing on this. Council, have any questions or comments? Seeing nobody, Nancy, would you take a roll call?
Counselor Coons?
Favor?
Counselor Osher?
Approve.
Counselor Perry?
In favor?
Counselor Maynard?
In favor?
Counselor Gardner?
In favor?
Counselor Robertson?
In favor?
Counselor Grenier?
In favor?
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Thank you. I am going to recuse myself and ask Councillor Perry to take order 20-155.
So order 20-155 is order to determine if it is in the best interest of the town of Orono to dispose of tax acquired property at 25 College Heights, tax map 019-002, lot 053, through the bid process outlined in the town ordinance section 2-150B. Sophie, do you have anything to say about this?
The only thing I would strongly recommend is whatever process we put in place that that council seriously consider having me work with our current code officer / assessor to create reasonable restrictions as to what you expect. I would suggest that we look at 30 Island Avenue as an example. It's taken a while to negotiate that, but we finally have it where the property has to meet property maintenance codes within, I think it's 60 days of the purchase and sale agreement being signed, and then a period of time for it to come down, or have a reasonable plan to rehab it, which on both of these properties, I think that's going to be very difficult.
Tom, could you take a motion and a second for this order?
Thank you. To continue our discussion, should we have a motion on this order?
So moved.
A second? Okay. This can still be amended, of course, if we decide to amend it. Councilor, have any comments on this order? I think we would all agree with Sophie's suggestion that we have some conditions, no matter how we dispose of the property, that it be either rehabbed or removed in a reasonable amount of time and meeting all of our codes.
What would we consider, just, to consider moving this forward with the parameter that we have to either rehab or remove? What would an appropriate timeline be? 1 year, 6 months, 18? I mean, I know that neighborhood well, and I know we want to see some forward movement here, but we want to be reasonable for whoever does come in.
If I look at, I am just getting to the point because of COVID-19 where we're signing I have an appointment to sign the purchase and sale agreement for 30 Island Avenue. And what we came to there was that the outside of the property needed to meet the property maintenance code before the end of this year, just period. So that means all the junk needs to be gone, all the, it needs to be mowed, it needs to not be a hazard, the windows need to be closed, it needs to be secure. And then he has to work with our code officer, who right now is going to be, is Mike Noble, is the one assigned, to develop a plan that is reasonable if he wants to try to rehab it. expectation is he and Mike are gonna walk through it and probably decide that it's not rehabable. Not able to be rehabbed. So I think a pretty immediate, you need to secure it, because that's the whole argument we gave for not giving her an opportunity to redeem it. So the town did take care of some trees that were very concerning to us. And there are trees out back, and there's arborage out back. You also need to secure the building to not allow people inside it. But based on what I've heard from the from the water company, I think it pretty much flooded, and I don't know that there's a lot to save in this house.
Do we need to put a timeline on this, or could we just say to be negotiated, to have any hazardous situations with trees and that sort of thing, and buildings secured within a reasonable amount of time to be determined upon?
I think there is a way for us to put a note out in the next couple of days. If you wanted to do it by negotiated sale, that would make the person, whoever wants to bid on it, everybody knows it's there, but whoever wants to bid on it has to come forward with a plan. And hopefully part of that plan includes making the town whole with a price, but also a plan for how they intend to take care of this mess. That way we're not prescribing it, and it's not a bid, so it's not based only on the money. Council would be able to see what the plans were and what the money was. And you open it up and we take a look, and then you decide which you think is better. So it's one of those times I do think the alternative might be a good option for you.
And the alternative being a negotiated sale.
I had a question, and I apologize, I did have notes on this page. Is it possible to give the abutters like the right of first refusal? Is that a possibility, and then a negotiated sale if there's no takers, or if they don't want to deal with that? Go ahead.
My suggestion would be that if that's the way you want it to go, we could absolutely do that, Cheryl. It would be a matter of sending notice out to the abutters, giving them a reasonable amount of time. I think it's 14 days minimum. So I would do 14 days. And I think I would ask them for the same thing. I think we would want to hear what the offer is, and understand that it's not just money that we are interested in. It's also the plan for what are you going to do with this parcel. A sale to abutters, though, I would do that as a process first. If you don't get something you like, then come back and do another process. I wouldn't put it out and say abutters get preferential treatment. That could look really bad, especially in the circumstances here.
I don't see what the advantage would be to do anything other than a straight negotiated sale. Don't we get the greatest opportunity to get good, a wider range of proposals, and then we have the opportunity to negotiate with any of those proposals. So I'd be in favor of just going with a negotiated sale.
I agree with you too. Also,
Yeah, I agree. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, Rob, I was just agreeing with Tom. I can see that. Everybody come to the table, bring in, negotiate, find the best offer, and go from there.
So if
yeah, I'm also in. Oh, sorry. I think it
go ahead.
offers us the greatest degree of flexibility, and also, I mean, the priority has to be just the safety of that area, that neighborhood.
So if we are interested in a negotiated sale, we need to have an amendment to that effect on this motion. Is that correct?
I make a motion that the order be amended to utilize the formal bid process. No, not the formal bid process, the negotiated sale process as outlined in section 2-150B, section B, section 1, subsection 1. 2, sorry. Thank you.
We have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, now my understanding is that we will vote first on the amendment and then vote on the amended motion. Is that correct? So is there any further discussion on the amendment before we take a vote on that? Okay, Nancy, could you do a roll call on the amendment to use negotiated sale in this matter?
Yes. Counselor Coons,
In favor?
Counselor Osher,
In favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
Abstain.
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor?
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor?
And the vote is 6 in favor and none opposed and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Nancy. And now we'll take a vote on the amended motion. And is there any discussion on that? Then let's have a roll call vote. Nancy, please.
All right. Counselor Coons,
In favor?
Counselor Osher,
In favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
Abstain.
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor?
Counselor Grenier.
In favor?
And the vote is 6 in favor. There were none opposed and 1 abstention by Counselor Maynard.
Thank you, Nancy. And with that, I guess I will turn the gavel back to our chair.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate your help.
You're very welcome.
Moving on to Order 20-156, Order entitled Debt Refunding and New Money Bond Order authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $15,268,518, the 2020 bonds. I would ask at this point if I could get a motion to waive the reading of the remainder of this order.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Nancy, can you take a roll call vote on whether I get to waive the reading?
Yes, Counselor Coons,
In favor?
Counselor Osher,
Favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
In favor.
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
Yes, in favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor?
And the vote is 7 in favor, none opposed to waiving the reading.
Great, thank you. So now I need a motion and a second on Order 20-156. Can I get a motion, please?
So
Move
moved.
approval.
Second?
All right. Does anyone have any further questions or comments for Dick or Sophie? I had one question regarding, will Old Town be doing a similar $250,000 match for OTO fiber?
So they are doing an update this month on where we're at with the process. They haven't really started considering the talk about doing a bond. The $250,000 stays strictly in the town of Orono as far as investment, so that the infrastructure would all be placed within Orono. Old Town also has some grant opportunities that we don't have available to us. There are forest products, there are designated forest products community, so there's some other NBRC funding that they might be able to reach. But that's where we're at so far with the process.
Real quick question, Bill. This would, by doing this, it would give us a definite advantage as far as the development of the OTO fiber and the whole timeline with Orono, and that in itself could probably incentivize Old Town to get a skedaddle, shall we say, for a technical term.
Yeah, Old Town has walked right along with us as we've done this process. They've been supportive, but typically Orono has taken the first step and then Old Town has followed.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Bill. Nancy, will you take a vote on order 20-156, please?
Okay, Counselor Kuntz,
In favor.
Counselor Osher,
Favor.
Counselor Perry,
In favor.
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there are none opposed.
Yay.
Moving on to order 20-157, order authorizing the town manager to engage Oliver Associates to perform pre-construction survey work for the proposed Mahaney Development Drainage and Road Project at a cost not to exceed $20,000 with funds drawn from the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. We've got two special guests that just showed up, so. Rob, do you speak first or so?
Yeah, so with the bond proceeds not being available until early November, it's important to get a head start on getting the project designed. And the first step is the survey. We actually go out and physically inventory existing conditions. And that's kind of tough to do if we end up with snow in November or December. So it's important that we get a head start on that. This $20,000 will give us enough funding to move forward with the survey and begin the base plans. So we'll be able to do most of the design work over the winter and hit the ground running in the spring of 2021.
Any questions for Rob on this?
Yep.
So, all right. That's an easy one for you, Rob. So Nancy, will you take a vote on order 20-157, please?
Counselor Kuntz,
In favor.
Counselor Osher,
Favor.
Counselor Perry,
In favor.
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Okay. Last but not least, order 20-158, order authorizing the town manager to purchase police radio equipment from Radio Communications Management of Maine of Portland, Maine at a cost not to exceed $11,000 with up to $10,100 drawn from the state asset forfeiture fund and the remainder from the FY21 approved police department operating budget. Take a motion, please.
Move approval.
The
Second.
All right. Josh, you get this or?
Sure, I'll take it. Josh Ewing, Police Chief. As we talked about in the committee meeting, we have portables that are right around 15 years old. The model is 15 years old and the service life is well past its normal life. We have around $10,100 in asset forfeiture money and thought that this would be an appropriate use of that so we can have better communications. The bid that was approved by the Regional Communications Center in Bangor is the Radio Communications Management of Maine. And through that bid for their infrastructure upgrade, we are then eligible for their locked-in pricing for radios that would then be compliant and compatible with that infrastructure upgrade. The quote for 17 radios, new portable radios for our officers comes in like right around $10,668, I believe. So we would utilize that $10,100 in our asset forfeiture account and then pay the rest out of our operational budget. I mentioned in the committee meeting that those portables are failing regularly in the sense of their communication capacity. They don't dial together, but we have difficulty with transmissions from the town in certain areas, and that's just a huge officer safety issue, and we need just that newer model to have better communication.
Any questions or comments? Josh, will these radios do anything fancier than what we have right now?
That's a great question. The radios we have now are analog, and don't ask me to explain the difference between analog and digital, but as we move forward with the federal guidelines since 9/11, actually, there's a digital compliance that is necessary, and the state police has already moved to that digital compliance, and the expectation will be in a few years that all communications will require that capacity to be digitally compliant. So these radios do both analog and digital, and they also have the capacity for many more frequencies than we use now, so that in a large scale event, we would have the capacity to talk to more people.
Great. Anyone else have any other questions or comments?
You mentioned that the ones that you weren't going to be using anymore would be used somewhere else. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes, another good question. The radios we have would work for say a public works operation that is kind of like in sight lines of each other, maybe for like flagging situations. So there would be certainly a use for these radios, and I guess a backup for us as well during a large scale event.
All right. Anything else? Seeing no counselors eager to discuss this, I will ask Nancy, Council Clerk, to take a vote. Thank you, Josh.
Counselor Coons?
In favor.
Counselor Osher?
In favor.
Counselor Perry?
In favor.
Counselor Maynard?
In favor?
Counselor Gardner?
In favor?
Counselor Robertson?
In favor.
And Counselor Grenier?
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. We will move on to council committee and representative reports. Councillor Grenier, do you have anything to report?
Yes, it was our community development committee had quite a bit going on, so I'm kind of jockeying between my notes here. It was pretty much we were talking to the recreation department, Parks and Rec, and on the recreation and open space ordinance revision. There was also talk about we had talked about this earlier, but there's up to $1,000 grant that Mitch spoke about for educational pieces. So there's actually signage and education, but the more important part about that is the educational side of this. We also talked about the commercial solar overview. We discussed how important the land use to represent solar projects. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Geez, I'm on my notes here. Sorry about that. The Parks and Recs gave us an update on department staffing. They spoke about what they are up to. Mitch is in more of the administrative role, where Megan is doing the work and has actually a great voice for him. And she brings flexibility to the department. Meg also kind of gave us an update on the summer programming and what that looked like. She ran the programs for 6 weeks with the hopes of having about 10 people in a class, but she averaged about 6. And then they talked about the challenges, and as you can imagine with the kids, the challenges were wearing their mask and staying 6 feet apart. We talked about trails and open spaces. Right now, they're working on creating an interactive map on the Parks and Rec website, and also kind of discussed briefly about the 30-mile connectivity type trail that would join 3 of our communities, and the process that they're working on that. We then talked about Gould's Landing and Netto, Savoy Park. There was a grant given, which allowed for Seaboard Security to provide parking monitoring, and that's at 40 hours a week. A lot going on. When we talked about fall programming, the planning efforts and priorities, it will look different because of the limited space, as you can imagine, and looking at possibility of using tents. There will be no games or any kind of intramural kind of scrimmaging going on. Then we talked about recreation programs to support workforce needs, trying to prioritize those needs. The number one priority is meals for seniors at the Keith Anderson House. And number two would be major after-school programs to continue. We talked about updates on celebrating Pride Month. Bangor Daily News via Nina Mahalaris did an article on August 11th. Councillor Gardner had a conversation with a city councillor in Hollowell about looking into sharing the costs of the between multiple communities for the durable plastic needed for the crosswalk. We also had discussed that we were waiting for the college students to get back to kind of further our committee because we wanted some representation from them. Lastly, we talked about the Scripture Memorial Thanksgiving dinner plans. We're mixing it up again, mixing it up this year. The event is going to happen on November 19th and will be a virtual get-together. However, we'll be delivering meals and we will actually have a curbside pickup. So we'll probably be asking people for their help as we get closer to that. And that's what I have.
Sophie, go ahead.
So I want to just give a preview because community development is meeting on Thursday. There's an agenda in your on the Google Drive for you. But Josh is going to join the group to talk about Police 101. So this is if anything you want to know about police operations, he is there to tell you all about it. Kyle's going to talk about solar. So we'll have some actual language for folks to look at. And we're going to talk about a very targeted revision to the signage ordinance because we have the ability to buy an electronic sign for the town, but we need to exempt the town from the ordinance so that we can put it out and actually use it. And then the Scripture Memorial Dinner, we got to have more conversation because we're trying to figure out how to make that work and still be in compliance with having food being cooked in different places. So we're working on kind of what the hurdles might be there. And so it's going to be a wonderful meeting, Terry, 4:30 Thursday on Zoom.
Thanks for the preview. Councillor Osher, do you have any reports?
I don't chair any committees. I'd
Okay.
love to one day.
I didn't know if you had gone to any meetings lately. Councillor Robertson, Environmental Committee?
Yes, we had our first meeting on August 27th. It was mostly an introduction. We got a chance to see each other and talk to each other about some of the things that we wanted to work on. But mostly we just went over the charge that's been given to the committee. We got some ideas. And right now, our next meeting will be September 24th. And we are in kind of a research mode right now. So we're looking at Maine Climate Council recommendations and aligning their recommendations for municipalities to our comp plan. And also, so we'll be talking a little bit more. We're going to start diving into the weeds a little bit more next week. And we're also going to start thinking about putting together some kind of a recycling plan for or a pilot plan for our complexes that have units of more than 2. They have no recycling, and we've been getting emails from people who are interested in recycling. So we haven't talked about it formally as a committee, but we're slowly starting to turn some wheels. So it's good. We'll be meeting number 2.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Councillor Perry.
Finance and Operations met last Thursday. We heard from Josh about the need for the radio purchase that we approved already this evening. We heard from Sophie and Rob Yerkser about an overview of a very interesting and I think exciting asset management planning process, which we will all hear a lot more about as we move forward. Sophie made a presentation on the debt refunding proposal that we have taken action on tonight. And we reviewed the financial reports for July and August. And there were no significant issues in those reports.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Gardner.
Yes, I hope that I make it all the way through this without any internet interruption. I think the tenants in the apartments upstairs just got home, and I believe they like to stream and game. So I've been cutting in and out a little bit. At the Comp Plan Implementation Committee meeting on September 3rd, we discussed the Main Street Sidewalk project, a very high-level discussion about where we're at and next steps. One of the things that's in the process of happening now is, in order to sort of rethink the pedestrian infrastructure on Main Street and have safety and ADA compliant improvements, Rob's getting together with a little committee of folks who can provide some good expert feedback on that process. So that is ongoing. We also discussed the question of MDR lot sizes. There had been some talk about, whether we were going to go out to the public to talk about a specific or much smaller lot size. There were some legal issues with that, though, so we did discuss getting some public input based on the specific recommendations of the comp plan on that issue. We also discussed an official map, doing sort of complete streets versus, an officially, like, how flexible do you want an official map to be? So that is another ongoing process. Yeah, I made it without losing my internet.
Thank you very much. So we'll move right into, did you have any reports, Councillor Kuntz, from any meetings?
No, thank you.
How about any items of concern or future agenda items?
No.
Okay, we'll go back up then. Councillor Gardner, while you're still with us, agenda items or future items of concern?
I have none.
All right. Councillor Perry?
No, I have none.
Councillor Robertson? Councillor Osher?
No, thank you.
Councillor Grenier?
I have none.
All right. Public petitions, I don't think we have any. Public comments, do we have anyone that wants to make a public comment? Dan has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Something that's greatly upsetting to me. Maybe it's not politically correct, but if you look at Black Lives Matter and you find out that it's an incorporated entity, a Marxist entity, and its collection is with the Democratic Party when you go on to contribute. The same thing with Antifa. If you go antifa.com, you'll find out that it is there's a collection site for the Democratic Party. Looking at the colorful animals and such, if this is any way associated with the Democratic Party and the colorful sidewalks, crosswalks, I'm offended. How come in the past we haven't had our good industries and organizations within Orono represented in such a position? I almost wanted to go and put a cross on there or something. I'm not really sure at this point, but I'm greatly offended by the singularity of this, because you have never once promoted the businesses within our community in such a way for a political organization, which, to be quite frankly, has done great harm across our country.
Dan, I'm going to ask you to stop. We did not take actions based on political agendas one way or
Very
another.
well, very well. But my voice is this: what I see in my eyes is something that bothers me greatly. Our country is wonderful. Our town is magnificent. We have such great depth. Why the singularity? I find it offensive. And that's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Is there anyone else that wishes to make a public comment? Sophie?
Oh, no, I thought Dan did again, but we are all set.
Okay. All right. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right. By a show of hands, we will adjourn. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone, for hanging in there. Long night. See you all on Thursday.
Wear your
Thank
mask.
you.
Thank you.
Wash your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye.
Well, I had that time pretty well.
So that was the only time he was